The chamber was older than most stars. It floated above a dying sun, a ring of black stone and living light, carved by civilizations that no longer existed. This was the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Council, where wars were ended, species were judged, and history was decided with a raised hand and a spoken vote. Today, the chamber was afraid. The delegates did not say it out loud, but everyone felt it. The low hum of energy shields, the flicker of translated whispers, the way even ancient beings avoided looking directly at the human delegation standing at the center of the floor. Humans stood there without chains. That, more than anything, unsettled the council. They were smaller than most species in the room. Softer. No claws. No natural armor. No visible weapons. Their clothing was plain. Their posture is calm. Too calm. The presiding speaker activated the floor sigil. The chamber fell silent. Humanity, the speaker said, voice amplified across the ring. You stand accused of destabilizing the galactic balance. No one gasped. This was expected. You expand too fast. You adapt too quickly. Your fleets learn from defeat instead of breaking. Your soldiers continue to fight after logic says retreat. Images flared above the floor. Human ships burning, but still advancing. Human colonies rebuilding within years. Human commanders rewriting tactics mid-battle. You are not malicious, the speaker continued, but you are uncontrollable. A murmur rippled through the council. The human envoy stepped forward. He did not raise his voice. Humanity followed every law you gave us, he said. Every treaty. Every limit. We fought when attacked. We stopped when told. The speaker's eyes hardened. That is the problem. Silence pressed down on the chamber. You obey, the speaker said, until obedience costs survival. Then you choose survival. The envoy did not deny it. The vote came quickly, too quickly. By an overwhelming majority, the council enacted the exile protocol. No war. No execution. No spectacle. Humanity would be banished beyond mapped space. All star lanes closed. All trade ended. All records sealed. Their names struck from active archives. They would not be destroyed. They would be forgotten. The human delegation was escorted out. No insults were thrown. No final speeches made. The chamber doors closed with a sound like a tomb ceiling. Outside, human ships waited in formation. Not attacking. Not fleeing. Just watching. Within weeks, the galaxy adjusted. Trade routes shifted. Defense plans were rewritten. Council historians edited records with careful hands. Humanity became a footnote. Then a rumor. Then nothing. Decades passed. The galaxy prospered. And then the alarms began. It started at the edges. Remote listening posts going silent. Automated defense arrays reporting engagement, then cutting out mid-signal. Entire systems losing contact without distress calls. The council dismissed the first reports. Pirates. Natural disasters. Local wars. Until a core trade world vanished in a single rotation. No debris. No survivors. Just empty space where billions had lived. Emergency sessions were called. Fleets were mobilized. Scouts sent into the dark. They did not return. A young archivist stood alone in a restricted vault beneath the council chamber, hands shaking as he scrolled through sealed records. He had not been ordered to come here. He came because the patterns felt wrong. Enemy movement. Energy signatures. Tactical timing. It felt familiar. He broke protocol. Unsealed files glowed to life. Old ones. Dangerous ones. They carried a red mark across the top. Human strategic doctrines. Absolute classification. The archivist swallowed. The files detailed contingency plans for threats that ignored diplomacy. For enemies that could not be reasoned with. For wars where survival demanded sacrifice. Every scenario ended the same way. Probability of galactic survival without human intervention. Minimal. A cold realization crept through him. Most of the galaxy's emergency systems, the deep warning arrays, the autonomous defense grids, the fallback command logic, were built on human frameworks. Frameworks no one fully understood. Frameworks that assumed humans would be there to guide them. Another alarm rang through the council chamber above. This time, it was different. A fleet had engaged the unknown enemy near a populated system. The result was broadcast live. Council ships fired. The enemy absorbed it. Advanced weapons failed. Shields collapsed in seconds. Entire battle groups were erased with brutal efficiency. The chamber erupted in panic. Voices shouted. Demands flew. Accusations followed. The speaker slammed the staff down. Silence. The room stilled. The archivist ran into the chamber, ignoring protocol, his voice breaking as he spoke. "We made a mistake," he said. Every eye turned toward him. "We banished the only species that plans for wars it hopes never happens," he continued. "The only one willing to lose to make others survive." The speaker stared at him in disbelief. "You suggest we reverse the exile protocol?" The archivist nodded slowly. "We are already using human systems to stay alive," he said. "Without humans." A heavy truth settled over the chamber. Far beyond mapped space, in the cold dark where no council ship dared travel, humanity watched the galaxy burn from a distance. And for the first time since exile, a signal stirred to life. Not a greeting, not a plea, an ancient human emergency code, echoing through the void. Humanity had been erased, but the galaxy was about to remember why they were feared. Beyond mapped space, there were no council lanes, no beacons, no rules, only distance, cold, and time. When the last official star lane collapsed behind them, humanity did not look back. That was not defiance. It was discipline. Every human ship followed the same silent order: move outward, scatter, survive. The first years after exile were the hardest. Trade vanished overnight. Rare materials became priceless. Entire industries collapsed. Some colonies failed. Some ships never reached their destinations. Billions of humans learned, all at once, what it meant to exist without witnesses. But humanity had never depended on comfort. On Earth, emergency councils replaced political theater. Old flags were lowered, not destroyed, set aside. Arguments about ideology felt small when survival was on the line. Nations did not dissolve. They synchronized. War did not vanish because humans became peaceful. War vanished because it became inefficient. Resources were counted with brutal honesty. Every ship, every reactor, every trained mind was logged, audited, and repurposed. Humanity did not ask what it wanted to be anymore. It asked what it needed to endure. Hidden shipyards bloomed in asteroid belts no alien had ever charted. Human engineers stripped abandoned alien tech down to principles instead of copying designs. They rebuilt everything their own way, simpler, tougher, and made to be repaired under fire. Human fleets grew quieter. No bright signatures. No waste heat. No unnecessary emissions. Human ships stopped announcing themselves to the universe. On Earth, education changed. Children no longer memorized galactic law. They studied systems thinking, failure analysis, history, not the polished version, but the ugly parts. The moments where humans survived because someone refused to quit. Artificial intelligence advanced, but never ruled. Humans remembered why the council had feared them. They built AI as partners, not commanders. Every machine had a human failsafe. Every algorithm was taught to assume loss and plan anyway. Above all else, humanity trained for isolation. No rescue, no reinforcements, no applause. Years turned into decades. And still, humanity endured. From deep space, human observers watched the galaxy evolve without them. New alliances formed. Old rivalries flared. The council spoke loudly of stability and peace. Human analysts noticed something else: complacency. Fleet drills grew predictable. Defensive doctrines optimized for known threats. Council species relied on treaties and deterrence, assuming enemies would behave rationally. Humans had learned long ago that not all enemies cared about survival. So humanity prepared for what the galaxy refused to imagine. They modeled wars against silence, against hunger, against forces that did not communicate. They simulated extinction-level scenarios and asked one question again and again: what would it cost to save someone else? The answer was always the same: a lot. Then the signals began. At first, they were faint distortions, energy echoes from beyond known space. Human listening posts picked them up years before the council noticed anything wrong. Human analysts did not celebrate being right. They went quiet. Patterns emerged. Movement without communication. Attacks without escalation. Total erasure instead of conquest. Human simulations matched. An enemy that did not negotiate. An enemy that did not fear loss. An enemy that consumed. Human leadership gathered in a closed session, not to debate morality, but timing. Intervening now would expose humanity. Staying silent would doom billions who had once voted them away. The argument was not simple. Some remembered the exile. The sealed star lanes. The erased names. The quiet deaths of forgotten colonies. Others remembered something older. That humanity did not define itself by how it was treated, but by what it chose to protect. The decision was delayed. Then the forbidden signal arrived. It cut through deep space using an ancient human emergency frequency, one humanity had shared long ago under mutual defense treaties. Treaties the Council had later erased. The signal was short, broken, almost ashamed. Unidentified hostile force. Council fleets failing. Requesting assistance. The room was silent when the message ended. No cheers. No anger. No relief. Only wait. Human leaders understood the implication immediately. Responding meant revealing everything humanity had become. Remaining silent meant letting the galaxy burn while pretending exile had absolved them of responsibility. Humanity chose neither pride nor vengeance. They chose conditions. A reply was drafted. Not emotional. Not threatening. Clear. Humanity would engage the threat. But humanity would not return as subjects. They would return as equals, or not at all. The message was sent. Across the galaxy, the Council received it with disbelief. Humans did not beg forgiveness. They did not ask to rejoin. They stated terms. And they promised one more thing. Once engaged, humanity would not stop until the threat was gone. No retreat. No half measures. The Council hesitated. Then another system went dark. Permission was granted. In the cold void beyond mapped space, human fleets began to move. Not rushing. Not broadcasting. Each ship activated systems that had never been tested outside simulation. Human commanders reviewed casualty projections that would horrify any Council strategist. They accepted them, because humans had already decided something the galaxy had not. This war would be fought where civilians could not. And if that meant humans stood alone in the dark first, so be it. Far away, the unknown enemy advanced. Unaware it had crossed into a war humanity had been preparing for since the day it was banished. And for the first time since exile, human ships aligned their vectors toward home. Not to reclaim it, but to defend what had never stopped mattering. The first human ship to make contact did not fire a weapon. It drifted at the edge of the invaded system, engines dark, heat masked, hull absorbing the cold like stone. Its sensors drank in everything. Radiation scars, gravimetric wounds, the empty orbits where planets had once lived. There were no refugees, no wreckage fields, just absence. Human analysts compared the data to archive projections. The match was near perfect. This is not a conquering force, one analyst said quietly. This is a clearing force. The enemy fleet moved like a tide, not in formations, not with ranks or command ships. Thousands of vessels of varying mass and shape flowed together, reshaping themselves mid-movement. When one was destroyed, the others adjusted instantly, filling the gap without hesitation. No hesitation meant no fear. Human doctrine flagged the conclusion immediately. An enemy that does not fear loss cannot be deterred. The human ship transmitted its findings back through tight beam relays. Deep space stations received the data, then forwarded it inward toward Earth and the hidden fleet clusters. The response came back in under 3 minutes. Observation phase complete. Escalation authorized. Across multiple systems, human fleets were repositioned. They did not mass together. They dispersed, creating overlapping kill corridors instead of defensive lines. No Council admiral would have approved it. Human admirals did. Because lines broke. Corridors bled. The first human strike was surgical. A single enemy vessel was isolated at the edge of the swarm. Human weapons punched through its outer shell, not to destroy it, but to capture data. Drones latched on, ripping samples free before detonating. The enemy did not react. It did not accelerate, did not maneuver, did not transmit. It continued forward, leaking energy and matter into the void, unconcerned. That confirms it, a human commander said. No pain response, no self-preservation loop. The second strike was different. Human ships fired mass drivers loaded with relativistic slugs, simple weapons, brutally effective. 3 enemy vessels were erased completely. The swarm adjusted, not away from the fire, toward it. Human commanders watched the feed in silence as the enemy reoriented, flowing into a tighter formation, increasing density where the attacks originated. They're learning, someone said. No, the commander replied. They're optimizing. The order was given. Withdraw. Human ships vanished into dark space, engines flaring just long enough to escape detection. The enemy swarm followed for exactly 8 seconds, then turned away. It had identified a higher priority, a populated system. On the far side of the galaxy, the Galactic Council watched the same engagement through delayed feeds. They did not understand what they were seeing. Why are the humans retreating? One delegate demanded. They had the advantage. They are testing, the archivist said, voice tight. They always test first. Another system died before the council could respond. Billions vanished without a broadcast. Council fleets scrambled, but they moved like institutions, slow to adapt, bound by procedure. Their weapons were powerful, but designed for enemies that negotiated, regrouped, or retreated. This enemy did none of that. Human command reached its conclusion quickly. The enemy was not a species. It was a process, a self-propagating extinction engine. Human strategists modeled its origin. Every projection ended the same way. It did not seek territory. It did not seek resources in a conventional sense. It reduced complexity wherever it found it. Life, infrastructure, anything that resisted entropy. The galaxy was simply messy, and the enemy was cleaning it. Containment is impossible, a human general said during the briefing. Destruction is unlikely. So what's left? Another asked. The general did not answer immediately. Delay, he said finally. Redirect. Starve. Human fleets began Phase 2. Instead of defending populated systems, they attacked supply vectors that did not exist in any council doctrine. They targeted stellar energy flows, gravitational anchors, and exotic matter streams the enemy used to sustain cohesion. Human ships burned themselves out over stars to destabilize fusion gradients. They collapsed artificial microsingularities, knowing it would destroy the ships that did it. Council observers were horrified. Human commanders were not. Every sacrifice bought time. Every delay saved lives. The enemy responded by splitting its swarm, accelerating its advance across multiple fronts. Humanity adjusted. Human fleets did not attempt to stop the entire invasion. They chose corridors, choke points where physics favored defense, regions where the enemy would have to compress itself to pass. Human engineers triggered ancient contingency plans, some older than humanity's exile. Stars were destabilized. Hyperlanes collapsed. Entire regions of space were rendered unusable. The galaxy screamed. The Council accused humanity of destroying trade routes, of condemning future generations. Humanity did not argue. Because while the Council debated economics, the enemy fed. A Council world survived an attack for the first time, barely. Human intervention had arrived hours before annihilation. The footage spread instantly. Human ships weaving through enemy fire. Human pilots ramming vessels when weapons fail. Human marines boarding enemy constructs that did not breathe, did not speak, and did not resist capture. Only disassembly. The survivors wept. The council chamber fell silent. Why didn't they come sooner? A delegate whispered. The archivist did not answer. He knew the truth. Humanity had not been waiting for permission. They had been waiting for certainty. Human losses mounted. Ships vanished without distress calls. Entire strike groups were erased to by minutes. The casualty reports grew longer, colder. Human morale did not break. Because no one was surprised. Human commanders had known from the beginning that this war could not be won cleanly. There would be no decisive battle. No surrender. Only endurance. The enemy adapted again. It began ignoring human fleets when possible, pushing deeper toward the galactic core. It calculated that bypassing resistance was more efficient than consuming it. That calculation would have been correct. Against anyone else. Humanity enacted Phase 3. They baited the enemy. A heavily populated corridor was left exposed, on purpose. Council fleets protested. Human ships withdrew just enough to make it believable. The enemy took the bait. It surged forward, compressing into a massive wave to accelerate its advance. That was when space broke. Humanity triggered a chained collapse of artificial gravity wells. Space folded inward, crushing the enemy's swarm into itself. Thousands of vessels were annihilated in a single, silent instant. Human ships caught in the collapse died too. The galaxy watched the feed. For the first time, the enemy slowed. Not in fear. In recalculation. Humanity had done something no other species had achieved. They had forced the enemy to think. The victory was temporary. The cost was enormous. The enemy would adapt again. Human command knew it. So did the council. The speaker addressed the chamber with a voice stripped of authority and pride. We misjudged them, the speaker said. Not because they were violent, but because they were willing. The archivist stared at the battle feeds, watching human ships burn to keep distant worlds alive. They were always willing, he replied. We just made sure they had nothing to lose. Far beyond the council core, human fleets repositioned again, preparing for the next phase. The enemy had been slowed, not stopped, and now it understood something new. Humanity would not run. Humanity would not negotiate. And humanity would trade everything it had to make sure the galaxy survived, even if the galaxy never forgave them. The first human ultimatum was not delivered to the council chamber. It was delivered to reality itself. Across multiple star systems, human fleets executed coordinated withdrawals at once. Defense corridors collapsed. Gravity anchors were shut down. Human ships vanished into dark space, leaving behind silence and exposed worlds. The effect was immediate. The enemy surged forward. Council fleets scrambled to fill the gaps, but they were too slow. Their ships moved in formation, waited for orders, and demanded confirmation. The enemy did not wait. Entire systems were lost in hours. The council panicked. Emergency sessions blurred together. Accusations flew. Some demanded humanity be ordered back into defensive positions. Others accused humans of abandonment. The speaker's staff cracked against the floor again and again, trying to restore control that no longer existed. Finally, the speaker spoke words the council had not uttered in centuries. We request an audience. The signal was sent through channels once sealed by exile law. It carried no authority, no command codes, only a request. Human command received it while watching casualty projections scroll across silent displays. They did not respond immediately. Human leaders understood leverage. They had learned it the hard way. When the response finally came, it was not from Earth's political council. It was from a joint command formed after exile, military, civilian, scientific, and ethical authority combined. The transmission was clear. Calm. You will listen, the human voice said, or the galaxy will continue without us. The council chamber fell silent. The speaker swallowed. We are listening. Human command did not soften. The enemy you face cannot be defeated with deterrence, the human voice continued. It does not value life. It does not recognize negotiation. It cannot be intimidated. The feed shifted. Projections filled the chamber, paths of extinction stretching across the galaxy like wounds. Your fleets slow it, the humans said. They do not stop it. Council delegates watched worlds blink out on the map. Humanity can stop it, the voice continued. But not under your rules. The words struck harder than any threat. What do you demand? The speaker asked. The human answer came instantly. Authority. A wave of protest erupted. You cannot expect. We do. The human interrupted. And you will give it. Because every second you debate, another world dies. Silence followed. The human voice lowered, not in volume, but in weight. We are not asking to rule your galaxy. We are asking to save it. And those two things cannot coexist. The conditions followed. Human command would control strategic defense across all threatened regions. Council fleets would operate under human tactical oversight or withdraw. Political interference during active operations would result in immediate disengagement. And one final condition. Exile protocol would be erased. Not symbolically. Completely. All records restored. All sealed histories reopened. Humanity's banishment was acknowledged publicly as a mistake. The council chamber trembled, not from violence, but from consequence. Some delegates objected. Others hesitated. A few remained silent, already knowing the answer. Another system went dark. The speaker lowered the staff. The conditions are accepted. Human command acknowledged the transmission. And the galaxy changed. Within hours, human fleet markers reappeared across tactical maps. Not clustered, not defensive, encircling. Human ships re-entered contested space with precision. New formations emerged, fluid, adaptive, constantly shifting. Council fleets struggled to keep up, but human commanders did not scold. They were reassigned. Human officers integrated alien captains into strike cells, not as subordinates, but as specialists. Each species fought where it excelled, shielded by human tactics that assumed failure and planned beyond it. The enemy adapted again. It began targeting human command nodes. That was expected. Human command nodes did not exist. Human leadership was distributed across redundant networks, mobile platforms, and isolated decision cores. When one node vanished, another assumed control without pause. The enemy learned nothing from destroying human ships. Humanity learned from every loss. Human scientists completed their analysis of captured enemy matter. The conclusion was grim. The enemy could not be reasoned with because it was not alive in any traditional sense. It was an automated extinction response, likely created by a civilization long dead or consumed by its own creation. It existed to reduce complexity. Life was complex. Civilizations were noise. Humanity did not announce this finding to the galaxy. They acted on it. Phase 4 began. Human fleets stopped trying to stop the enemy everywhere. They focused inward. Human strike groups positioned themselves along routes leading toward the galactic core, not to defend planets, but to defend time. Time for evacuations. Time for adaptation. Time for something worse. Because human projections had reached a terrifying conclusion. The enemy was not the final threat. It was a filter. Something had built it to precede something else, or to ensure nothing followed. Human command debated this quietly, not whether to share it, but when. Because telling the galaxy too early would cause panic. Telling them too late would be murder. Human fleets fought on. They used weapons the Council had once forbidden: gravitational shear cannons, time-dilated kill zones, relativistic impact strikes that cracked moons. Each uses scarred space itself. Human commanders authorized them anyway, because the enemy could not be allowed to reach the core intact. Casualty reports climbed. Human civilians saw the numbers. No censorship. No propaganda. Just the truth. There were protests on Earth. Not against the war. Against restraint. Human citizens demanded more ships be sent. More resources committed. Even knowing the cost. Human leadership did not exploit the emotion. They studied it. Every life matters, one broadcast said. That is why we will not spend them carelessly. Then came the moment that broke the illusion of control. The enemy changed direction. Without warning, a massive portion of the swarm diverted away from human-controlled corridors and accelerated toward the Council core itself. Not a feint. Not an attack of opportunity. A decision. Human command watched the trajectories lock in. Silence fell across human command centers. That puts them here in weeks, an analyst said. Not months. The Council panicked openly. Emergency evacuations were ordered. Delegates argued over priorities, over which archives to save, which species would be escorted first. Human command cut the debate short. A transmission went out across all channels. Humans. Unfiltered. This is not a drill, the voice said. The enemy is coming for the heart of the galaxy. There will be no evacuation of leadership. There will be no retreat. The Council speaker demanded an explanation. Human command gave it. If the core falls, the human voice said, everything else is irrelevant. A new map appeared. Human fleets repositioned, not between the enemy and worlds. Between the enemy and the Council core. Human command made the decision none of the Council ever could. They would make their stand where it mattered most. Even if it meant the galaxy would watch humanity die doing it. Human fleets accelerated. Behind them, alien ships followed, not because they were ordered to, but because, for the first time, they understood something the Council never had. Humanity was not fighting to be forgiven. They were fighting because someone had to. And far beyond the invasion front, deep in human territory, a final system began powering up. One that had never been activated. One designed for a war humanity prayed would never come. The enemy advanced, and the galaxy held its breath. The Council core had never seen war. It was a dual system, wrapped in layered defenses, surrounded by neutral space, protected by treaties older than most civilizations. Its fleets existed to deter, not to fight. Their presence alone had always been enough. Until now, when the enemy's new trajectory became undeniable, panic spread through the core like a living thing. Civilian traffic clogged orbital lanes. Delegations demanded priority evacuation. Ancient species that had once voted calmly to erase humanity now begged for escorts. The human command said no. Not cruelly. Not loudly. Simply no. All non-essential traffic is grounded, the human broadcast announced. This system will hold or it will fall. Movement increases risk. The words shocked the Council. "You cannot trap us here," one delegate protested. Human command responded with a single sentence. "We are not trapping you. We are standing here." Human fleets arrived first. Not in triumph. Not with ceremony. They came in silence, emerging from dark space at precise coordinates, forming a living wall between the enemy's projected approach vectors and the core itself. Thousands of ships, some massive, some barely larger than fighters, locked into overlapping positions that made no visual sense to alien tacticians. There was no central flagship, no visible command ship. The formation looked messy. Alien admirals whispered concerns. "It's not efficient," one said. "It's not symmetrical," another added. A human liaison officer overheard and replied calmly. "It's resilient." Human engineers worked without pause. They rewrote defense grids mid-deployment, linking Council installations into human networks that assumed partial failure as the default state. Where Council shields had layered redundancy, humans added overlap. Where Council weapons fired in synchronized volleys, humans staggered timing to avoid pattern recognition. The enemy would not find a rhythm. That was the point. Council fleets took position behind the human line, uneasy but obedient. For the first time in galactic history, the Council Corps' defense did not answer the Council. It answered humanity. The first contact came sooner than expected. The enemy did not announce itself. Space simply changed. Sensors screamed. Gravity warped. A section of empty void ahead of the human line collapsed inward as the enemy swarm surged out of compressed space, faster and denser than any previous encounter. Human ships opened fire instantly. Not all at once. Not in waves. Each ship fired independently, responding to local conditions, guided by predictive models that updated faster than any centralized command could process. The effect was chaotic, but devastating. Enemy vessels shattered. Swarm density dropped. Then it adapted. The enemy began sacrificing its own units deliberately, forcing detonations within human firing corridors, overwhelming sensors with debris and radiation. Human ships vanished in bursts of white light as friendly fire risks spiked. Human commanders adjusted without hesitation, switched to blind fire protocols. Human weapons went dark, then reactivated, firing based on probability instead of confirmation. Alien observers were horrified. "You're shooting without targets." Human response was immediate. "We're denying space." The battle became something the galaxy had never seen. Not a clash of fleets. A contest of endurance. Human ships rotated constantly. Damaged vessels pulled back automatically, replaced by fresh ones that slid into place without command. No hero charges. No last stands. Just relentless resistance. The enemy pushed harder. It compressed its swarm, concentrating force into a spear aimed directly at the core's central orbital ring. If it broke through there, the system would die within minutes. Human command saw it coming. They did not order a retreat. They ordered a lock. Human ships surged forward, closing distance, tightening formation until maneuvering became impossible. Point-blank engagements erupted. Human pilots rammed enemy vessels deliberately, triggering controlled detonations that tore holes in the swarm. Human Marines deployed in zero-atmosphere boarding actions, not to capture, but to sabotage from within. They died without oxygen, without backup, buying seconds with their bodies. Council feeds showed it all. There was no censorship. Delegates watched humans burn to keep the line intact. For the first time since the exile vote, the council chamber was silent not from fear, but shame. Then the enemy did something new. It ignored the human line. A massive portion of the swarm peeled off and accelerated past the engagement zone, slipping through micro-gaps too small for council ships to exploit, but wide enough for the enemy's adaptive mass. They were not aiming for fleets. They were aiming for the core itself. Human command reacted instantly. Trigger contingency. Across the system, ancient human devices activated. Structures the Council had never fully understood, built quietly during early cooperation eras and never dismantled. Space folded. Localized gravity wells surged into existence, not collapsing space this time, but stretching it. The enemy swarm slowed as distances elongated around it, each meter of advance costing exponentially more energy. The price was steep. Those wells consumed human ships to remain stable. Human vessels burned out, torn apart to anchor reality itself. Alien captains protested. "You're killing yourselves." A human officer replied without looking away from the display. "We're buying minutes." The enemy fought the distortion, shedding mass, adapting again. It began breaking into smaller units, slipping through stretched space like fluid through mesh. Human command grimaced. "It's still coming." The council speaker demanded answers. "Can you stop it?" Human command did not lie. "We can hold it," the reply came. "Stopping it requires something else." Deep within human-controlled space, far from the battle, a system finished powering up. Its activation signature rippled outward, subtle but unmistakable to those who knew what to look for. Human scientists exchanged silent looks. The final option was waking. Back at the core, the line held, barely. Human losses crossed thresholds no council war planner would ever accept. Entire squadrons vanished. Commanders authorized tactics that guaranteed death for the crews executing them. And still, no one retreated. Council fleets began to follow human examples. Alien ships rammed enemy constructs. Alien captains broke formation to plug gaps without waiting for orders. Species long considered cautious learned, in hours, what humanity had learned over centuries. That survival sometimes required refusal. The enemy slowed again. Not from damage. From resistance. For the first time, it encountered a region of space where progress cost more than advance gained. Where every calculation ended in diminishing returns. It recalculated and chose escalation. The swarm began emitting energy signatures never before recorded. Exotic reactions flared within its mass. Space-time buckled. Human analysts froze. "That's not an adaptation," one whispered. "That's activation." Human command understood immediately. The enemy was not just a process. It was a trigger. Something larger was being prepared. The human commander issued a system-wide broadcast. "This battle is no longer about the core," the voice said. "This is about preventing what comes after." Council delegates demanded explanation. Human command gave them none. Because some truths could not be spoken until action followed. Human fleets tightened their formation one final time. They would not fall back. They would not yield. Because if the enemy crossed this line, the galaxy would not get another chance. And far away, in the dark, the final human system came online, ready to end a war, or end everything. The signal reached the front lines without announcement. No alarm, no countdown, no explanation, just a quiet update flashing across human command networks. Final system, active. Human commanders did not celebrate. They closed their eyes, because every one of them knew what that meant. The line at the council core was still holding, but barely. Human ships were running on emergency reserves. Ammunition was being fabricated mid-battle from recycled wreckage. Pilots were flying with damage that would have grounded them in any other navy. And the enemy was changing again. The exotic energy emissions detected earlier were increasing. The swarm's internal structure was rearranging itself, compressing into something denser, more unified. Not a fleet anymore. A weapon. Human analysts confirmed the worst projection. "It's building a convergence mass," one said. "If it completes, it won't just break the line. It'll overwrite local physics." Council observers struggled to understand. "You mean destroy the system?" "No," the analyst replied quietly. "Erase it, including everything around it." The council speaker's voice cracked. "How long?" The human command answered honestly. "Hours. Maybe less." Silence spread through the chamber. There were no more arguments. No more protests. Just the sound of a galaxy running out of time. Human command convened its final council. Not politicians. Not admirals alone. Engineers. Medics. Civilian representatives. Ethicists. Survivors of exile. The question was not if the final system would be used. It was where. Activating it near the core would stop the enemy, but it would also collapse the region permanently. Trade lanes. Stars. Worlds. Gone. Activating it farther out would spare the core, but risk failure if the enemy adapted again. There was no perfect solution. There never had been. Humanity chose the third option. They would move the enemy. The plan was brutally simple. Human fleets would disengage in stages, not retreating, but guiding. Every withdrawal would leave behind just enough resistance to pull the swarm forward, away from the core, toward a dead region of space humanity had prepared long ago. A graveyard. Council fleets protested. "You're opening the core." The human command replied calmly. "We are baiting extinction." The maneuver began immediately. Human ships at the front burned hard, sacrificing stealth for speed, drawing the enemy's attention. Strike groups peeled away at precise intervals, collapsing corridors behind them, forcing the swarm to follow the path of least resistance. Human losses spiked. Ships that could have escaped stayed behind to sell the illusion. Crews volunteered without hesitation. No speeches, no farewells, just acknowledgments and closed channels. Council feeds showed human vessels detonating to keep the enemy's focus forward. The council speaker watched, unmoving. "They're not retreating," he whispered. "They're leading it." The enemy took the bait. It surged after the withdrawing human line, accelerating, compressing, eager to finish what it had calculated as inevitable. Behind it, the council corps breathed again. Evacuations resumed. Defenses stabilized. For the first time in days, the galaxy saw a future beyond the next hour. That future was being purchased with human lives. As the enemy advanced, human resistance thinned, but never vanished. Just enough pressure, just enough loss, guiding extinction through the dark. The destination loomed ahead. An uncharted region of space humanity had once called the Black Quiet. No habitable worlds, no stable stars, a scar left behind by ancient cosmic violence. And at its center, the final system. Human fleets formed a closing arc, not to stop the enemy, but to frame it, to box it in just long enough. The activation sequence began. Across the region, human-built structures unfolded from folded space. Massive rings of impossible geometry ignited, feeding energy into a core that bent reality itself. The system was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a reset, a forced simplification. Anything within its radius would be reduced to raw matter and energy. No structure, no complexity, no adaptation. The enemy detected it instantly. For the first time since contact, it changed behavior. Not retreat, not attack, avoidance. It tried to scatter. Human command anticipated this. Seal the perimeter. Human ships surged forward one last time, forming a living cage. Council fleets joined them, not because they were ordered to, but because leaving felt impossible now. Alien captains died beside human pilots, ramming, firing, holding gaps that should not have been survivable. The enemy fought back with everything it had. Space tore open. Gravity twisted. Ships vanished without explosion, simply unmade. Human command stayed silent. There was nothing left to say. The activation reached a critical threshold. The system demanded a final input. A choice. Automated or guided. Automated would be faster, but imprecise. It would risk expanding beyond containment, destroying more than intended. Guided would require a human presence inside the activation zone. Someone had to stay. Human command did not ask for volunteers. They already had them. A single human ship broke formation and accelerated toward the heart of the system. Its engines burned white-hot. Its shields failed almost immediately. The pilot did not slow. Council feeds caught the transmission. "This is Commander Hale," the voice said, calm despite the noise. "I'm in position. You're clear to engage." Human command hesitated for exactly 1 second. "Confirmed," came the reply. "We see you." Hale smiled. "Good," he said. "Make it count." The ship vanished into the growing light. The system fired. There was no explosion, no sound. Space simply simplified. The enemy swarm collapsed inward, its complexity stripped away faster than it could adapt. Vessels dissolved. Energy bled off. The convergence mass unraveled into harmless radiation. The effect rippled outward, contained exactly as planned. When it was over, the region was empty. No enemy. No human ship. Just silence. The council chamber did not cheer. No one moved. The feeds showed the aftermath, a space where a war had ended without victory poses or triumph. Only absence. The human command finally spoke. "The threat is neutralized," the voice said. "There are no remaining signatures." The council speaker struggled to find words. "You saved us." Human command replied, softer now. "Yes." A pause. "And we paid the price we always knew we would." The casualty lists began to populate council displays. Numbers beyond comprehension. Named species could not pronounce. Lives spent to protect a galaxy that had once voted them away. The council speaker bowed his head. "For what it is worth," he said, voice breaking, "the galaxy will remember this." Human command answered without anger. "No," they said. "It won't." Another pause. but some will. Far from the core, human fleets regrouped. Damaged. Reduced. Still standing. They did not return to the council. They did not ask for thanks. Because humanity had never fought this war to be welcomed back. They had fought it because if they didn't, no one else could. And in the quiet that followed extinction's defeat, the galaxy faced a truth it could no longer ignore. Humanity was not dangerous because it was violent. Humanity was dangerous because it was willing to burn itself to keep everyone else alive. The galaxy did not celebrate. There were no victory parades, no ceremonial broadcasts, no speeches echoing through the stars. The war had ended too quietly, too completely. One moment extinction loomed, the next it was gone, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than fear. The council core survived. That fact alone felt unreal. Debris fields drifted where fleets had once clashed. Entire regions of space were scarred, twisted by weapons no species had ever dared imagine. Trade lanes were broken. Economies stalled. Civilizations counted losses that could never be replaced. And humanity was gone from the front. Human fleets withdrew without announcement, slipping back into the dark the same way they had emerged. No demands. No negotiations. No claims of authority. The council chamber convened in an emergency session, not to plan war, but to understand peace. The speaker stood before a room that no longer felt ancient or powerful. We owe humanity more than gratitude, the speaker said. We owe them the truth. The chamber did not object. Records were unsealed. For the first time since the Exile Protocol, the full history of humanity's banishment was released across the galaxy. The votes, the arguments, the fear disguised as logic. Civilizations watched the footage in stunned silence. Human delegates standing calmly as their species was erased. Council members speaking of balance while quietly admitting they feared what humans might become if truly threatened. The revelation spread faster than any invasion ever had. The world mourned, not only their dead, but their choices. Then the question no one wanted to ask finally surfaced. What now? Humanity has saved the galaxy. But humanity had not returned. The council sent envoys, carefully worded messages offering apologies, reparations, permanent seats, shared leadership. The messages went unanswered. Human space was quiet, not hostile, just closed. Within human territory, the cost of the war settled in. Cities dimmed lights to conserve power. Memorial walls filled silently. Families grieved without spectacle. Commander Hale's name was etched into stone beside thousands of others who would never be recovered. Human leadership did not frame the war as victory. They framed it as duty fulfilled. A final assembly was called on Earth, not broadcast, not political. Representatives from every human domain gathered in person. No uniforms, no ranks. The question before them was simple: return or remain apart. Some argued the galaxy needed guidance now more than ever. That without humanity, old patterns would reassert themselves. Others argued humanity had done enough. That returning would mean being pulled back into systems that had already proven willing to erase them. The debate was honest, emotional, unresolved, until one voice quieted the room. A civilian representative. A teacher from a border world lost early in the war. They didn't call us back because they loved us, she said. They called us back because they were afraid. Silence followed. And now they are grateful, she continued. But gratitude fades. Fear returns. Human leadership listened. We didn't fight to be accepted, she finished. We fought so children we'll never meet could grow up. That doesn't require us to stay. The decision was made. Humanity would not rejoin the council. Not as members. Not as rulers. Instead, a declaration was sent, public, unmistakable, and final. Humanity would remain independent. They would share defensive knowledge freely. They would respond to existential threats. They would never again submit to exile law. And they would never sit in judgment of the galaxy. The council received the declaration in silence. Some delegates wept. Others felt relief. The galaxy began to rebuild. Council doctrines changed, slowly, reluctantly, but permanently. Defense planning shifted away from deterrence toward resilience. Evacuation protocols were rewritten using human models. Sacrifice was no longer taboo in theory, only in necessity. Human doctrines were studied, not worshipped, because one lesson was clear. No species should ever be forced to become humanity again. Years passed. New civilizations rose. Old ones adapted. The scars of the war became reference points, markers of how close everything had come to ending. Human space remained quiet, but not absent. Human ships appeared at the edges of crises. Silent escorts. Unmarked hulls. They intervened when needed, vanished when not. No flags. No speeches. Just action. A generation grew up across the galaxy knowing humanity not as a rumor or a myth, but as a boundary. The line beyond which extinction did not pass. In the council core, a new chamber was built. Smaller. Simpler. At its center stood an empty seat. Not reserved. Not ceremonial. Just empty. When asked why it remained unfilled, the speaker, now much older, answered simply, "So we remember what it cost to earn their silence." Far from the core, at the edge of known space, a human patrol ship drifted near a newborn star. Its crew watched the light bloom, quiet and brilliant. A junior officer asked a question that had been whispered for years. "Do you think they'll ever ask us to come back?" The captain considered the star. "Maybe," she said. "And if they do?" The captain smiled. Not with pride, not with bitterness. "We'll ask why," she replied. "And if the answer isn't good enough? Then humanity would do what it had always done. Turn back into the dark. Not because it was unwanted, but because it had learned something the galaxy was still struggling to understand. Some protectors do not rule. Some saviors do not stay. And some lines are strongest precisely because they are held by those willing to walk away once the danger has passed. History tried to simplify what happened. That was its first mistake. In the centuries that followed the war, scholars across the galaxy argued over terminology. Some called it the silent defense. Others named it the necessary sacrifice. A few, more honest than most, recorded it as the war we survived because we were not brave enough to fight alone. None of the names felt right, because none of them captured the truth. The truth was that the galaxy did not save itself. It was saved by a species it had decided was too dangerous to exist within its borders. The rebuilding took generations. Trade routes were redrawn around regions of space that would never recover. Entire systems were declared permanently dead, their stars unstable, their physics scarred. Children grew up learning maps with dark zones labeled simply as human intervention areas. No one questioned the label. Council law changed, not dramatically, but permanently. The exile protocol was abolished. No civilization could ever again be erased without unanimous consent, and even then, only after evacuation guarantees. It was too late for the lesson to feel noble. But it mattered. Humanity did not attend the signing. They sent no observers, no advisors, no demands. They shared data when asked. Defensive schematics were released freely, stripped of anything that could be turned into conquest. Some council members found this generosity unsettling. "They give us tools, but not trust," one delegate complained. An older representative replied quietly, "They gave us survival. Trust is something we have to earn." Human space remained independent, but it did not isolate itself completely. Patrol fleets monitored the deep dark beyond the galactic edge. Listening arrays watched for anomalies long before they threatened settled worlds. When pirates raided border systems, human ships appeared without warning and without explanation. When stars destabilized, human engineers arrived, worked silently, and left. When a young civilization accidentally triggered a subspace cascade that should have wiped them out, humanity intervened and erased all evidence they had been there. Legends grew anyway. Stories passed between species, of unmarked ships that arrived before disaster, of calm voices cutting through panic, of beings who did not ask for thanks, only for people to move quickly and survive. Some began to call humanity the wardens. Humanity did not correct them. On Earth, life continued. Cities rebuilt. Technology advanced. The war was taught honestly, without glory. Children learned the names of the dead not as heroes, but as people who chose to stand where others could not. Commander Hale's name became a chapter title, not because of how he died, but because of what his choice made possible. Human leadership never centralized again. Power remained distributed, deliberately inefficient to conquer, impossible to decapitate. Humanity had learned that survival depended not on strength alone, but on refusing to become what others feared. Occasionally, the council tried again. Invitations arrived, carefully worded, earnest, apologetic. Humanity always replied, never with anger, never with refusal, just with boundaries. Humanity would cooperate. Humanity would protect. Humanity would not govern the galaxy, because ruling required believing you knew what was best for everyone else. And humanity knew better than to believe that. The empty seat in the council chamber became sacred in its own way. New delegates asked about it. Older ones answered. That is where certainty once sat, they would say, and where humility learned to stand. The galaxy grew quieter over time. Not weaker, wiser. Threats still emerged. War still happened. But never again did the council assume survival was guaranteed by tradition or treaties alone. They remembered the line, the one humanity held. At the edge of known space, long-range sensors picked up something strange one day. Not an invasion, not a threat, a signal. Old, faint, artificial. Human analysts noticed first. The pattern was wrong for natural phenomena, wrong for known technology, wrong in a way that felt uncomfortably familiar. Human command did not panic. They activated observation protocols. No fleets mobilized. No warnings issued. Not yet. A council liaison requested information. Humanity responded honestly. We are looking into it. That was all. On a human patrol ship drifting near the outer dark, a young officer stared at the incoming data, feeling the same quiet weight her predecessors had felt centuries earlier. Do you think it's happening again? She asked. The captain studied the display. Maybe, he said. And if it is? The captain leaned back, eyes steady. Then we'll do what we always do. The officer nodded. Stand in the dark? The captain smiled. Stand so others don't have to. Far away, in the council core, an archivist updated a living record. Not a law, not a doctrine, a reminder. It read, humanity was banished because it would not accept extinction as an acceptable outcome. When extinction came anyway, humanity returned. Not to rule, not to punish, but because someone had to be willing to pay the price. The archivist paused, then added one final line. The galaxy did not crave humanity's return because it missed them. It craved them because it remembered what the universe looks like when no one stands in the way. Out beyond the stars, human ships adjusted their patrol routes slightly. Not in fear, in readiness. Because humanity had learned a truth the galaxy was still learning. That survival is not guaranteed by power, unity, or hope. It is guaranteed by those willing to stand where the cost is highest and walk away once the danger has passed. Humanity had been banished. Humanity had returned. And now, humanity watched,